Hello, hello! Today we have another beautiful green palette. This is the first time I have ever tried Fantasy Cosmetica. This is a brand that I've heard a lot of other YouTubers who like to review indie palettes have talked about, and I finally, this past Black Friday, was able to grab a couple of these. So you'll be seeing some more Fantasy Cosmetica reviews on my channel for the time being. This first one that I decided to try out was the Druid Palette. And I tried to look up just for, background information, because I know that a lot of these palettes are kind of based off like classes. So a droid was a member of a high-ranking priestly class. They were a learned class among the Celtics, and they could be priests, teachers, or judges. So this is what that palette, I guess, is based off. When I look at the names of the palettes that this brand has, it kind of reminds me of D&D, where like Dungeons and Dragons, like when you choose to be like a fighter or a bard or, I'm a knight or something like that, you know what I mean? So that's what that is representative of and what it symbolizes. I really like the packaging. I like how kind of simple it is. It's super colorful. It covers the whole palette, and on the back you'll find the name of the brand with all that information in the back. But I just really like how this kind of looks like as if it were almost like stained glass. I like that the name is also on the top, so when you stack them like this and you got a whole bunch of them together, you can still read the name of the palette on the top. The bottom's just black, but this is so cute. It almost looks like a little Disney film on the cover. So this is just the sleeve, and the sleeve is basically just the same exact thing that you'll find on the actual palette. So if you would want to get rid of your sleeve, you could, because you end up with the same information on both ends. In here you'll find a small mirror, so we do have a small mirror in there. I also really like how everything is just as details. The detailing at every spot's just covered with artwork. I think that's really cool. And here are the actual shades. I really love the cohesiveness of this palette. This color story makes a lot of sense to me in the tone, in just like the shades that are in here. I love the sparkle. I bought this palette, so I got this palette on sale. I was able to get this palette for about, I think it was $27, which is, for a 9-pan palette, kind of on the pricier side, but I feel like whenever I review palettes that have shifting shades or like duochromes or multichromes, that they tend to be more of what I would call investment palettes because they are more expensive. So overall, do I think that $27 is worth it for a 9-pan palette? In most cases, probably not, but because there's such special shades in this palette, I feel like that kind of makes it worth it. And it's also worth noting that, of course, this is an indie brand, so you're also supporting a small business. Look at these shades. Oh, I love that. I like, now that I'm looking at it, you kind of have like your primary colors here. But I think for the mattes, the ways that these look in here aren't the way that they swatch. I think this ends up looking like a darker green. I think this ends up looking like a lighter green, and this shade was so interesting. To me, in person, I can see a lot more when I'm looking at my camera, but to me in person, this looked like a dark brown red. Once I actually used it, it was a beautiful like mulberry wine. It was like a purple red brown. It was very interesting, such an interesting color. There's so many shades in here that I don't, as of yet, have noticed that I have yet. I mean, of course, I'm still running through my palettes and trying, but there were some interesting surprises in here. Surprises in here that I have never dealt with yet in any other palette or brand. And I want to say that it's not good things or bad things, they just kind of are, but I still accept it, and I still really like this palette, and I'm not giving this palette away. So first, I just want to talk about the shimmers, because I am a shimmer girl. So the first thing with the shimmers is I think that the best shimmers in here are these two. So we have Bare Form and Serenity. And I just mean they're the best shimmers in here because of the way they performed, not necessarily the color. So these two performed the way that I love shimmers to perform, which is they were just so easy to apply. I didn't have to like wet my brush or anything. Maybe a little bit more. They just worked very well. And these are the kinds of shades where I'm like, this is the way that a shimmer should perform. Do you see how I have applied this onto my hand? This is exactly what you get when you apply it on your eye. And it's freaking beautiful, and it worked great, and I had no issues with those. Now for every other shade in this palette of the shimmer shades, I had issues. But here's my but. I let them get away with that Sorry for all the quotations, but because they're duochrome shades, so I can't really expect these other shimmers to kind of perform and act the same way a regular kind of shimmer would. So I kind of let them get that pass. Because initially, these other shades, so we got Transformation, Regrowth, and Balance, these shades would not pick up on my brush just dry. But once I wet my brush with a setting mist, they did pick up and they performed well. So I don't mind doing that extra step for a shade that I don't have in my collection, for a shade that isn't the standard just shimmer. Because look at Balance, which Balance is the softest, like literally, like I complain a lot about shades being like putties, but this one is so soft. It's like a sponge. It is truly like a sponge. Like, it is incredibly, incredibly soft. And this is one of those shades that I call like a Tinkerbell shade. Because there's something about the green reflect. So this one has kind of like a light brown base. But the amount of shimmer that you get is beautiful and intense and crazy. And there's just something about like, it's actually more of like more of a teal sparkle. So that's very interesting, not like anything else I have before. I'm gonna swatch this one over here. And like I said, this one was also difficult to put on, but once I wet it, I didn't have any issues. You can see here, this one has a much darker base, but still with some green kind of shimmer. Hopefully that also gets caught on. And this, I've talked about this before, I really love shades that have this kind of reddish base and then turn into a different shade once applied. Because look at that. Oh! I love a shade like that. So this one's also very cool. It looks very interesting in the pan. It's got like a red base in like a gold and green kind of reflect. Mostly gold, I think. I think out of all the shades in this palette, Regrowth was probably my least favorite for some reason. I think you can see here in the reflection of the light, this one kind of it's almost like cast, and there's some sparkle in there, but I feel like once I applied this one onto my eye, I didn't really get that sparkle intensity, so I think it's my least favorite shimmer in here. I think my favorite shimmer in here is just this simple, plain brown, so easy to use. I needed just like a toned down, neutral look. Y'all, I used this row right here, this column, I used it for my look to take my passport photo. Okay, like it was very beautiful, just simple, elegant look, just an everyday look. I feel like this palette would be great for everyday looks because you got these beautiful, if you want beautiful, bright, intense shimmer, you got that. You have more of these brighter colors. It's just, I'm so happy with this palette. I feel like this one turned out so well. I think my favorite matte in here was this Old Growth one, just because when I looked in the palette, look how intense that is. It's gorgeous. It just looks like a brown red. But then once I swatched it and I was blending it out, I could see like purple. It was kind of turning like a purple, and that's what I mean, kind of like this mulberry wine. I really like that. Something interesting that I've never really seen with the wear of these shades. I've never had this happen before. And like I said, it's not necessarily a bad thing or a good thing, but I noticed that with the mattes on my eye didn't last very long. And I don't mean like they creased or they disappeared, but like, for example, when I wore like this forest shade over here, this is actually like a green. It's like dark green. Throughout the day, I noticed that it went from this kind of more intense green, and it lightened up. It was still, camera died mid-speaking, but yeah, it was still there. It was just like a lighter. So imagine kind of like at the tail end of this swatch, it kind of ended up being lighter. So I thought that was very interesting, where it had kind of faded away, but at the same time, like it was there. It was just softer. And this is after a couple hours of wear. Something also interesting that I've never, like I said, I've never really encountered this with the shimmers in this palette. They lasted like a really good, decently long time. I think maybe midway through my day, after 4 or 5 hours, I noticed the slightest of creasing, and so I just went back on my eye and I tapped on my eye, just to remove that creasing, and then it was like I had just done my makeup all over again. It was so beautiful, and I wasn't expecting that. With this last look that I did, let's see, I think I did this look yesterday. So I used Sage, Forest, and Balance, this really, really soft shade that they have here on the top. when I used it yesterday, I felt like when I looked at the end of the day when I was about to take a shower, I felt like it just looked like a softer makeup look I had done versus the way makeup usually looks at the end of my day, which is like, oh, at this point after 8 hours, you know, it's creased, I've lost some of the matte shades maybe, I've rubbed my eye clearly in a corner and it gets all messy, you know, it's just the usual how you end your day. But I still was so surprised to find how pretty the look looked at the end of the day. I don't know, I've never witnessed or experienced that. That was such an interesting kind of experiment. I really liked the shades. I didn't have any issues working with the mattes. I had some issues working with the shimmers, but like I said, with special duochrome shimmer formula, you kind of expect it to perform differently. And once I just kind of wet my brush, I was very easily was able to pick it up, put it on my eye, and it lasted a really good time. So overall, I really like this palette. I do. I think this palette's amazing, and I'm so excited to see what the other palettes have to bring. I have 2 more Cosmetica palettes, and I've kind of been itching to buy some more, but I've been holding off because I was like, I need to try the palettes that I already bought, see how I feel about them. So I'm hoping that since this one is a win, my next 2 will also be wins. I'm so excited for that. But let me know what you guys think of this beautiful color story. It really, the artwork on it absolutely does it justice. Just by looking at the palette, you know the color story you're going to get. I think this is gorgeous. Shimmers and mattes are so unique. I'm so happy I was able to wear this look for my passport photo. But let me know what you guys think. Have you ever tried Fantasy Cosmetica? Which one's your favorite palette? You'll have a great day.